The BBRSDA's core purpose and mission is to maximize the value of the Bristol Bay fishery for the benefit of our members. And with that, we're going to move into some briefings from the committees about what they've been working on. Before that, though, Andy is going to pull up some documents on the screen sharing tab of this Zoom interface, and we'll be telling you how to get more information from the BBRSDA in these upcoming weeks and months regarding the coronavirus, and then also the other activities that we focus on with our organization. So with that being said, if you could swipe over to the screen sharing app, Andy will tell you a couple ways that you can get engaged and stay in the loop in the upcoming weeks.
Mute, Andy, you're muted.
Yeah, Andy, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. So the first place I want to look at, and can everyone still see my screen now? Is we good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Our website is where we post up all the information that is pertinent and relevant, and hopefully a lot of you have been tracking that and seeing that. Real quick, I'll say, Becky, if you're the host, can you unmute Lalani for when we get to marketing? So at any rate, this is our website. This whole COVID-19 situation is going to have a lot of important ramifications for the fleet. And as information becomes available that you need to know, we will definitely post it up to our website. There's also a lot of other things in our website that I would point you guys to. If you look at our election, we've got elections coming up for board seats, and we've got information about that. You check out our elections timeline here. If you're looking for information about the candidates, we have information here on that as well. There's a whole bunch, if you're wondering, some of you might not be real familiar with BBRSDA, and we've got a lot of information about who we are, kind of the history, the governance, our strategic plan, all that type of stuff is on the website. A lot of what we do is project-based. We fund projects, and so you can see what we're funding and what the project reports are here. We've still got some project reports to add. A lot of what we've been doing lately has not necessarily been something that's funding a report, but we put stuff up there. Anybody that wants to submit a proposal can learn more about that on our website, and we have lots of programs and information for the fleet that will help with quality, can help with marketing, and so that's under here. And I'm going to talk about kind of the market information later, but that's under this tab as well. Anything that, anytime you're wondering when we're going to have meetings, we post meetings and events on our sidebar here. And I think on a smartphone, it ends up showing up at the bottom. But our sidebar is, a good place to come for all of the current events and that sort of thing. If you haven't signed up for the Bristol Bay Waypoints, this is our e-newsletter. I would ask that you do that. You just click on this button and it will take you to a form to fill out so that you can get on that email newsletter list. And again, whenever we have things to share, it's best for us to blast out an e-newsletter or put it on our website. So these are the places we'd ask that you go for that. Let's see. This I'll just talk real quickly about is our consumer-facing site. And I think Lalani will talk a lot more about what we're doing as far as marketing activities, but we have communications back towards the fleet and what all needs to happen there, and then we have marketing that is consumer facing. And so we've got a whole range of things here. We've got recipes, we've got some easy cooking techniques. We get asked all the time about people who maybe don't know a lot about cooking fish, and there's some really great resources here. A whole bunch of stuff here. One thing I will say for direct marketers out there, We have direct marketing assets, and we have a media library that can be very helpful for you guys and provide assets and resources. And so lots of good stuff here to check out. Other places that I'll point out, you know, we have a Facebook page, and that's a very easy way for us to communicate with the fleet. And so I would encourage you to either like or follow our page, because we try to be pretty active and put things out that people need to know. So that is, trying to think if I'm forgetting anything. Nels, can you think of any other areas for engagement?
Nope. I would just encourage people to like that Bristol Bay Regional Seafood Development page that you'll see posted in some of the Bristol Bay groups on Facebook, some of the shared articles. If you go and like that directly, then you'll be in direct contact and have the links and the information that we'll be providing from our organization.
I forgot one other one, and I'll just pull it up here quick.
Just while you're pulling that up, for all those new members who have joined, you can either post publicly to the chat any questions you may have throughout this webinar, or you can directly contact Andy or some of the moderators and ask your question there.
We also have an Instagram page that is at Bristol Bay All Day. That's your RSDA, and it, you know, focuses more on the culture and you know, kind of the feel and community of the fishery. But that's a fun page to follow. And if you're on Instagram, I would invite you to follow that as well.
Yep. Moving forward into some of the briefings of committees, I am Nels, and I'm the chair of the PRO committee, and we're in charge of public relations and outreach. And many of you on this webinar right now realize that we are not doing town halls anymore due to what's going on in the world. And so that's why we've taken advice from the powers that be, and we're socially distancing ourselves from each other and using this webinar as the platform to get information to all of you. Our committee this spring voted on funding some man overboard beacons and offering rebates to fishermen. And in the upcoming weeks, when we know more about how this season is going to play out, we will be posting more information about that. But if you are interested in getting some man overboard beacons for your vessels, we will have a rebate option for that. It will be limited and first come, first served, but just keep that on your radar. In addition to that, we had safety trainings planned this spring, like safety drill instructor trainings for vessels, and we have put those on the back burner right now because of what's going on, and so those are to be determined, in addition to the town halls and membership meetings that we had planned for Dillingham, Naknek, and Egegik. We are just putting everything on hold right now until we know more. And so that is my briefing for the PRO committee. Again, I would really encourage everyone to look over the elections for this year and look at the candidates, because ballots will be in the mail, and you'll have the opportunity to vote on a new board member, or 2 new board members. And so please stay up to date on that. And moving on, I'm going to pass the mic to Reba, who is going to give you a briefing about what the quality committee has been working on this past year.
Reba, are you muted?
For some reason, she is muted, and I don't know.
All right, I think I'm unmuted now. My name's Reba Temple. I am on the quality committee, and I know a lot of people are wanting to get to the COVID-19 part, so I'll try to keep this quick. So some of the things we've been funding this year is, as many of you know, we had some warmer summers, some RSW breakdowns, so ice is kind of something that we continue to think is pretty important to get out to the fleet. We're continuing to fund the ice barges and help with their operating costs, and we're trying to do some new stuff with ice infrastructure and distribution. So sometimes going into the river to get ice can be kind of a bummer and take some time that you would rather spend fishing. So we're trying to get an ice shuttle in the works that could shuttle the ice from the ice barge to the south line, say, and just make it a little more accessible to the fleet. We've also been working with Seattle TARP to, you can kind of see that on the slide, to get some kind of bag that would help you get ice from your processor out onto the tender and delivered to you. We had to already kind of close that down for spring so they could produce them, but we're looking at opening up again after the season. We're offering them off a discount to the fleet. And another exciting one is Northline Seafoods. We are helping them increase their capacity so that they can make more slush ice, and they would be offering that free to not just their fleet, but to all Bristol Bay permit holders. So that's pretty exciting. Couple other things, quality outreach. Again, a lot of you have probably seen the Captain Jack's, that centerfold about quality. We're going to do that again this year. KDLG commercials. Hopefully you guys have heard those at some point. And then some research and info that we've been doing. The processor survey, we give that out to processors, and then we get data directly from them about chilling performance, and how quality's been for them. And another thing that we are looking at this year is the certified quality reader. So we're going to be testing that out on the tenders, and that's kind of like a fish gun where you can scan or electrically send current through the fish, and it kind of tells you about how the fish is degrading and what the quality is like inside the fish. So that's kind of a new technology we're looking at. But that's kind of just summing up the quality activities we've been doing this year. And yeah, we can continue on now, I guess.
And one thing I'll just add too, we've, you know, the chart here that you see with the fish, for, you know, quite a few years, we've had a processor survey that tracks, you know, the amount of chilled fish and various aspects around quality that we send out to all the processors. And so we've been able to get a good bead on how this fleet has developed in terms of quality and chilling. And so that those reports are posted to our website as well as they become available. Now we'll turn it over to Leilani Dunn, our marketing director, to talk about our marketing activities.
Thanks, Reba, and thank you, Andy. Hi, everyone. I am going to walk you through what we are working on in regards to marketing. I started March 2nd, and it's been great. I've been able to overlap with Cameo for the last month, and I feel pretty caught up. We are working and have been working on our retail marketing program since beginning in 2016. We're in over 1,000. There's been over 1,000 retailers that are carrying our brand, which is fantastic, and we're continue to work with them. Right now, it's a little bit chaotic with COVID-19, but our team is working hard. We're in contact with all of our retail partners and are there to support them in any way we can while they try to keep up with the very high demand. As Andy showed you earlier, we do have a separate marketing website, which is bristolbaysockeye-salmon.org, and that's really to continue to build and demand brand awareness. And that is actually going to be revamped and will go live in April. So keep an eye out for that. Also this year, we are sponsoring the Alaska Symphony of Seafoods, and that is hopefully gonna help develop great new sockeye products and R&D and support our R&D efforts, as well as helping sponsor The Wild, which is a Mark Titus film. And he is in 2020 going to be screening the documentary all over the country. Right now, that is obviously on hold as well. But as soon as the green light to travel again is lifted, we will continue to promote that. This year, we were also planning on really branching out and pushing our international and food service programs. We will still be working on both. The Brussels Global Seafood Show was postponed, but we were planning on attending that and meeting with some international retailers. And we are game planning with our food service group to see how we could support our food service partners during this very difficult time for them. Lastly, we also work on market info data. Andy's going to walk you through that shortly, and you can find that under our bbrsda.com website under for the fleet. But while we have you guys, we are working on this year's photo contest as well as fisherman profiles. I'm working with the PR and outreach committees, most specifically NELS, and that will be updated. And it's going to be really, really great. There'll be fewer questions so that it's not so time consuming for you guys to submit your profiles. And again, look out for that. That should be around May or so. But if anyone needs to get hold of me, especially direct marketing, because that's another one of our efforts that we are putting focus on right now, do not hesitate to email me. My email's on the website, but it's my first name, Lalani at bbrsda.com. And I look forward to hearing from people about that. And that's it for marketing.
All right, it's under staff. If you want to find Lalani's email. Yeah.
Thank you for dropping that.
Yeah, I want to say just a few words about the market and value information that we've put out. You know, obviously fishermen always have a lot of questions about what's going on in the market. And in the past, my role had been to actually do a lot of the research and write the market reports twice a year. But doing that, you know, the information gets stale quickly. And so we felt like it was better to really update the key data on our website and post commentary from time to time, you know, as we have things to say and update. And so if you go to For the Fleet and down to market and value info, you can find that. And, you know, this is still a little bit old, obviously, but, you know, prior to this whole COVID situation, we did have some inventory of small fish. We were seeing pricing going down. And since that time, you know, we've seen demand increase quite a bit. But I wanted to just take this moment to call some attention to some of the data down here. There's, you know, one of the ways I often get asked questions about, are fishermen getting a fair price? What should the price be? And I always hold off on trying to call what the price should be, because if we're too low, that's a way that processors might shoot for that price. And if it's too high, then it creates false expectations, you know, in terms of making a forecast. But one thing that we can do is we can use data to look at, you know, how much the processing sector is selling the fish for, and how much, you know, of that is going to fishermen. And so this is kind of a time series chart where you can see how much sockeye, this is sockeye specifically in Bristol Bay, how much is being harvested in millions of pounds, what the base price was, and then you've got your preliminary ex-vessel value, and then we've got the final average price as all the bonuses and adjustments are added. And you can see that the difference between base and final average has gone up in recent years. And so then we get our final ex-vessel value. That's kind of the final value of what goes to the fishermen. And when we, you know, compare that to first wholesale value, you get this net processing revenue figure. And so you can see, I mean, everyone probably remembers what happened in 2015, where ex-vessel price, you know, went down to 50 cents. And the, you know, prior year, the net processing revenue fell dramatically, even in the years before that. So, you know, since then it's rebounded, and we've seen pricing rebound and seen things improve a lot. And, you know, this is what is driving that, well as, you know, both these things really. There's a lot of demand for fish in the bay. And so, you know, this data lags quite a bit. It takes several months after it comes out to, you know, put the whole year together. But eventually, I always say we do know the score. You know, we do know what it was sold for and what fishermen got from it. So a bunch of other data there to check out, and you know, we'll update it as we can. With this whole COVID-19 situation, there's probably a little bit of data to add yet, but we'll get that added soon. Let's see. Again, just kind of a summary of market conditions. Anecdotally, we're hearing reports of product moving faster, and you know, we'll see what consolidation in the processing sector looks like, whether that's still coming. We saw a lot of that a month, 2 months ago, at least posturing for it. And, you know, I think the world's kind of on hold a little bit right now, outside of a lot of food and other things being bought in stores and grocery stores. So in terms of forecast, the forecast looks really good for this year. We're expecting a lot of fish, and we'll talk more about this upcoming season in a little bit, but that's our market summary. Finally, this I just want to call attention to this chart, because sometimes we get questions around, you know, why are we marketing fish at a retail setting, or why are we marketing it further down the supply chain? And this really underscores that as the value of the resource goes up, fishermen tend to get a higher percentage. And that's what we would expect to happen in a competitive market, where the raw material producers do better when the value of the finished products increases. And so, you know, what this shows here is the blue colors are the ex-vessel value, both bonuses and base, and then the gray is what the processors sold it for net of what they paid to fishermen. And this line is the fisherman's share of first wholesale value over time, and it's, you know, 5-year average to kind of smooth it out. And so, yeah, as the value has increased, not only has ex-vessel value increased, but the percentage of that first wholesale value that fishermen get has gone up. So pretty tremendous where we're at, over $600 million in 2018. Just to kind of wrap up on our marketing plan and our approach overall, you know, we strive for maximum sustained yield. We fund all sorts of efforts that support that. We fund everything we can on quality. Quality is just absolutely critical, having good fish to market and advertise. And then we do marketing and go to consumers and make sure that they have a deep appreciation for the fish, the people, the place, understand how to cook it, and all the things that go into that. So now I'm going to turn it over to MJ to talk about our sustainability activities.
Hello, everyone. I'll keep this short, as I know that everyone is on this call not to discuss our committees and things, so we have the responsibility to present that to you in this town hall format. And I want to thank Nels for setting this up, and Andy for creating the agenda, and all the other committee chairs that are on the call. And I just want to start by saying we, as an organization, recognize it's an anxious time. We're here to reduce that anxiety through providing good and timely information. So we're going to get to the coronavirus information. I'll be very short with the sustainability, but just know that we're all feeling the same thing that you are, and we want to create a safe place to get information. So Sustainability Committee, I have the honor and the privilege of being on it, as well as Nels and Patrick O'Neill. And our job on the Sustainability Committee is to protect our pristine habitat and to support research. So that's what our funded projects are for. Andy, can you please go back to the slide set?
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. So what are some of the things we funded for 2020 is the Port Moller second vessel, so we get more accurate baseline data all the way out along the stations. We have twice as much coverage now, and so we're getting better information. The information with one boat was not quite the same as 2 boats, so we funded that. We're continuing our fight against the Pebble Mine by supporting habitat protection. And you guys know that we're fierce about that because you want us to be fierce about that. Andy, could you please scroll up a little bit? I can't see the bottom text on the slides. Okay, research. We've got the otolith research ongoing. We fund the BBFC salmon assessment for projects. And then we're trying something this year. We've got a net recycling program. We put out a request for proposal. We've had a proposal in, and we're trying to be responsible by recycling our nets. It's funded, but I just want to say we've put a hold on funding, or put a hold on full funding projects to see just how much money we might need for this coronavirus issue. So just know that we recognize the critical nature of this, and every committee, every single one of us directors are trying to help you out here. And thank you, Andy.
All right, thanks, MJ. I just want to show a few slides quickly about our budget and our financial position. This is how our FY20 budget breaks down at the moment. So you can see, mostly going to sustainability and marketing. Our organization and PRO efforts down there in the bottom left, a lot of that, it really supports all the other things that we're doing. And our pillars, our three pillars really are sustainability, quality, and marketing. And there's other things we kind of do to support those. So this is our budget breakdown. Our financial position, the assessment and the revenue that we bring in is a function of the fishery value, and we get 1% from the drift fleet. So you can see here where we've been at the last few fiscal years. Our fiscal year is also a calendar year basis, so it's pretty easy to keep straight. And so we are expecting to have around 3.1 million coming in later this year. And we are deficit spending this year because we've got a lot of that is due to the Pebble Mine. And also we've increased the marketing budget quite a bit. As we headed into this off season, we could see that it was going to need more marketing push. And so that's kind of where our budget's gone. Okay, we're going to actually go to a little bit about Pebble with Catherine Carscallon next. And Catherine, if you want to jump on, I'll get your slides up here in just a moment. Okay. Catherine Carscallon is with Commercial Fishermen for Bristol Bay. She's the executive director and a Bristol Bay fisherman, as many of you know. And she's going to kind of take you through what's going on with Pebble. And so, Catherine, if you're out there, feel free to jump in. No, for some reason, okay. Sorry, Catherine, I'm trying to unmute you. There it goes.
Okay, how about now?
Yep.
All right, I'm just jump in if my sound gets wonky here. My internet connection isn't very good. I'm trying to use my phone. But thank you very much for that intro, Andy. If for those of you I don't know, my name's Catherine, and yeah, I live here in Dillingham and have been working on. I've been a Bristol Bay fisherman my whole life, and have been working on this issue with the proposed Pebble Mine for, I guess, a little over a decade now, like many of us. And our group, Commercial Fishermen for Bristol Bay, many of you have been a part of it for quite a while now, and the BBRCA has supported our efforts for many years as well. But if you want more information, our contact info is up there, fishermenforbristolbay.org, and we keep it updated with take actions and just general fleet information. And we're revamping the website a little bit right now, so you'll see more in the coming weeks. But I think with so many of us spending time at home, we'll be putting more out there and more ways for people to engage. And I think just on a personal note, I know COVID-19 is on everyone's mind, so I'll run through presentation a little more quickly than we had planned before, but I do also want to say although we're adjusting our efforts to be respectful of leadership and the fact that everybody's overwhelmed with the situation right now, at the same time, I think there's really no better demonstration of the importance of local food systems and sustainable local economies. So we're in no means letting up on our efforts. Andy, do you want to click to the next slide here? So just to give a little bit of a background on where Pebble is in the process, what's ahead, and then of course, what can you do to engage? As many of you know, Pebble is currently in the permitting process, and you've probably heard us say over and over again, 2020 is really the essential year for Pebble Mine, and that's true both for our efforts to protect Bristol Bay and also for the Pebble Limited Partnership. And I think it's really important to understand where they are, and it kind of helps us understand what's driving their efforts. I think this application they've put in for the 404 federal permit really is their do or die moment. They don't have an investor, as you've seen over the years. The main investors in this project have spent a lot of money, spent a lot of time, and walked away from the project. So right now, this company is fully dependent on this permit, not only to see their mine go through, but really to attract investors. And therefore, that's why it's important for us to really not let up at this time. If you want to go ahead and click to the next one, just to back up a little bit, as all of you likely remember, we were very close to seeing final protections for Bristol Bay through the 404C process through EPA. So as most of you know, EPA has oversight over this 404 permit that Pebble has applied for. And back in 2014, starting with our tribes and our commercial fishermen and BBRCA, everyone was engaged in this process to try to get upfront protections and restrictions put on that permit before Pebble even applied for it. And we got about 99% of the way through that process under Obama's EPA. And then the Pebble Limited Partnership sued the EPA and got an injunction on those efforts. So that's where we left off with the change of administration. And then sorry, did I drop off here, or can you guys still hear me? I just lost my screen.
Well, we can still hear you.
Okay, I'll just keep talking off of what I've got on my screen then. So, like I said, EPA sued the EPA. I mean, Pebble sued the EPA and stalled the process. And with the new administration change, they.
Oh, no, we've lost Catherine. Catherine, if you can hear us, we've lost you. Can you try to unmute yourself? Sorry for the technical glitch, everyone. Give her just a second. Well, Catherine, I'm gonna try to keep moving through this quickly, and if you come back on with audio, please jump in. But in the interest of everyone's time, we'll keep moving. In 2017, the EPA protections were rolled back, and the proposed determination was stalled out. And I think we all kind of remember seeing that in the news. And basically what that meant is the protections that were going to be there for Bristol Bay were undone and rolled back. They didn't take it off the table at that point, but they were looking at doing it. And so it really stalled out. And so in 2017, Pebble submits its permit application to the Army Corps following the election. You can see the plan here that they have. But it's really, you know, they submit a smaller plan, but it's really kind of smoke and mirrors because the larger deposit is so much bigger. And to get to the really valuable stuff, you know, they would have to have a much larger mine, and all of the research supports that. And in order to be profitable and make this mine sustainable from a business perspective, it's going to have to be much bigger and take place over a much longer period of time than what is currently being proposed. So again, here's the pitch versus the reality of the Pebble Mine. You can see, this is their current mine plan. The resource is much, much larger, and it would essentially turn the entire district into, or the entire area into a mining district as other groups go after that. There's many important rivers, Cockatoolie, Malchatna, that drain into the Kvichak and Nishiyak. Basically the watershed line is right where the mine is. So this mine would affect both of the largest river systems in Bristol Bay, as far as Sockeye goes. The timeline has been really fast-tracked to try to get a decision done by the time of the election. And so you can see kind of where we're at right now. We're having, there's public review of draft EIS comments, and there's actually a preliminary final EIS out. And we expect that EIS to become final around July of this year. And then the Army Corps would issue a record of decision at some point, at least 30 days after that. So we will probably see a record of decision on this mine prior to this fall, is our expectation. And since it's still moving forward, I think the expectation is that we will see a permit. We can't believe how that's possible, and we hope that doesn't happen. But the fact that this is moving forward is very concerning. So Pebble's plan is really a moving target. There's been a lot of changes to it. I'm not going to go into all those, but just to say that 18 project changes as this process has gone on. It's really shifting underneath our feet, much like the ground does up in this area. So even the smaller 20-year mine plan is over what the EPA guidelines were in the Bristol Bay watershed assessment. So that's very notable. This is not that small of a mine plan. It's still very, very large. And then in last year, the EPA finalized its withdrawal of the proposed determination, taking those protections off the table. And so Bristol Bay stakeholders, including BBRSDA, BVNA, BB, I'm going to miss all of them, Bristol Bay Reserve, pretty much everybody joined in this lawsuit. And we are fighting to keep that proposed determination in place because the research is still valid and the conclusions are still valid. And so we don't think that should be tossed out without any sort of process behind it, which was really the crux of the issue, is that the EPA withdrew the proposed determination without any sort of process. There's lots of unaddressed issues in the environmental impact statement. You kind of read through the list here, but there's so much that's not addressed. And we were promised a very high bar for this mine plan and this project. And we're not seeing that. We're not seeing the robust, objective analysis that we were promised. Again, BBRSDA actually funded, when we heard that the Army Corps was not going to do a tailings dam failure study or wasn't going to look at it, we funded an independent study that looked at tailings dam failures around the globe. Tragically, there's a number of them to pull data from, and to see what a tailings dam failure in Bristol Bay would look like. That report's on our website. You can look at it, and there's a presentation on there as well. But it's catastrophic. This is a huge mine with huge tailings facilities, and if and when they fail, a lot of material is going to go downstream, basically wrecking salmon habitat forever. But again, the EIS is not considering that, and we're not really sure why, although we can kind of guess if they are trying to get to an answer of yes on a permit. Again, Senator Murkowski just saying that this needs to be a high bar. She said that repeatedly, and I don't think that we've seen the Army Corps act on those suggestions. I wanted to play a quick audio for you that kind of sums up, what we're talking about here and how insane this project is. So I know we're all going to get to COVID very soon. We've got plenty of time to talk about it. This will be recorded and be available on the web too for later. But this is important. This is an important question that Tom Collier from Pebble was asked by a reporter. So I want to play this clip.
Are there other mines similar in the type of process that you would use here, grinding rock into sand, extracting minerals, similar in size and hydrology of the area that you can point to that are 20 years along or more and have not had problems, have not had pollution issues?
Yeah, I think can't pull one up right off of my top of my head, but
so, that should have been the first question that was asked in this entire thing, and the first question that I would say Mr. Collier should have asked before taking the job was, where's the precedent in this? And obviously, it's nowhere to be found. So it's not really a question of can we have a profitable mine and a robust salmon fishery. It's really a choice. And what we've seen from the Army Corps is they're presenting this as a situation where there can be both, and history says otherwise. So it's important that we recognize that. In terms of everybody's role in the process, we have been, in contact with the delegation as well as the Army Corps who's doing the permitting on this mine. I think it's, with everything happening in the world and with the COVID-19 crisis, we requested that they extend the permitting process and timeline to give the agency time to do the important critical work that the Army Corps does in a national emergency situation like this. And this letter was just sent recently, so we have not received a response, but we are doing everything we can on Pebble to make sure that this process is not being subverted and that the bar is not being lowered. So
Hey, Andy, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, that's perfect timing. Thank you for covering the entire presentation.
I don't know if you could hear us while you were, yeah, I'm not sure if you could hear us or not, but again, anything that you might want to add, Catherine. All I would say to everybody out there is that, if you want to engage on Pebble, if you want to learn more, please go to the Commercial Fishermen for Bristol Bay website. They're a tremendous resource, and they are the tip of the spear in this effort to oppose a mine that, in the end, I believe will do great damage to the Bristol Bay salmon fishery. Anything else, Kat? Okay. Well, I can see you're shaking your head. Sorry for those technical difficulties, but we'll keep moving forward and get to, what I think most people on the line want to talk about. MJ, are you out there?
I am here. I'll come back. I'll get back on video here, but I'm here.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to run through a little bit of this, and I'll give you a chance to share your thoughts and perspective as well before I go on to each of the next slides. But I just want to point out first that this COVID-19 virus is an extremely serious situation, which we'll talk a little bit about on the next slide. And we need to keep in mind some overarching goals for this year. One of our overarching goals, I would say our first one, is to prevent this virus from being transmitted in a widespread fashion. The last thing we would want is for 15,000 people to descend on Bristol Bay and spread the virus to each other and the local population, the local residents. We cannot let that happen. We want to prevent overloading local medical services. There's, in a typical year, there's a few ER docs around to deal with sprains and breaks and that sort of thing. But if this goes sideways, Bristol Bay does not have the medical capacity to deal with all the sick people in the industry or the local residents that would become sick and need medical care. For the first two bullet points, if those are not taken care of, there could be deaths from industry workers or local residents, and obviously we don't want that. So our goal is to execute the season without having major health ramifications. And we also, in making this plan, we need to identify critical funding needs and sources for that. We do believe that there will be funding available, and the aid package passed by Congress, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, has some of that in there. And we'll be working with other industry groups to make sure that, if there are funding needs for this that are over our head, the RSDA said, we will work on getting those so that we can be as prepared as possible. A few of the other bullet points here, the local residents from Bristol Bay have raised serious concerns about public health, and we are hearing them loud and clear. It's very important that we collaborate and work with the local government and local residents. And we're also collaborating with processors. This is going to take a concerted effort, and we've had, I can't even count the number of calls I've had with folks from these different stakeholder groups, and we've been on a lot of them together as well, coming up with plans to, again, make sure that we execute this season without having major health problems. So plans are evolving, they are in the works. We don't have all the details sorted out yet, and they're going to need to evolve and adapt to the situation, especially as we see testing improve almost daily. And we will be working on getting access to those tests, which we'll talk a little bit about in a few minutes. And so, one thing I want to just explain the lay of the land here. All the processing companies are diligently, and I would say quickly, mobilizing to create COVID response plans for their own operations. That largely includes their workers, dealing with how they're going to get, any effects. There's really not a lot of effects on product, but dealing with their workforce. And that's where their concerns are, is how do they move workers around? And that is one of our concerns too, because we need processing workers to, process fish. Otherwise, we don't have a fishery. So processors working on that, local governments working on how to protect local residents, but somebody needs to step in and make a plan for how the fishery is going to fit into this. And so the task force has identified BBRSDA to draft a plan on behalf of the fleet and bring that, kind of into the fray. And so we're assembling a team to do that and scoping out all the different details and kind of topic areas that need to be included there. And the final bullet point here that, I think it's important to keep in mind is that because this is because there's so much downside and so much, awful things that can come from spreading the virus widely and overloading medical services, precautions, it's very likely that precautions could be required or mandated in order to maintain public health. And, we should all be ready for that. And I think I'll be supportive of that. And so I'll stop there. MJ, did you have any thoughts you wanted to contribute as well?
I just want to add, it's going to be a season like no other. And so we have to be prepared to adapt and accept that there may be limitations on our movements. We may be forced into a distribution system for parts, food, and other things that we haven't had to have before, but will provide security and keep this thing from vectoring outside. So it's going to be a different kind of season. And every person that I've talked to and texted with and emailed has said, whatever it takes, we will do whatever it takes. And so I want you guys to know, as a board, that's exactly what we're doing right now, whatever it takes. We recognize that this is an emergency. We don't have to tell you that. You're living the emergency. And I just want to reassure everyone that this board is committed to spending whatever we can to help the fleet go fishing.
Thanks, MJ. And, you know, this is priority number one at the moment, and will be probably up until the season and running through the season. We kind of saved it for last because we knew that there'd be a lot of discussion and questions. And so we wanted to take that on the heels of presenting this, and not get, you know, we could probably take up a lot of time with questions and discussion around it. But this is the lay of the land on the COVID-19 situation. And I see some questions coming in about, you know, various things which we'll get to. But, you know, first, I also want to say, for those who might not be aware, you know, or might be asking, why are precautions necessary? Is this really that big a deal? Why is everyone worried about this? You know, it's just a minor flu or maybe a tough flu. Well, there's a lot of historical precedent here. And I encourage everyone to check out this Frontiers episode that ran on what happened when the Spanish flu hit Bristol Bay in 1919. And maybe some of you know that story and know that tragedy. Some of you probably have relatives or parents even that were orphans from this time. It's an awful situation that happened in tragedy. It's estimated that 40% of the adult population died that year. And, you know, we do not want a repeat of that. And so I encourage you, if you're wondering about, you know, again, that sort of context here, to check out that about 24-minute episode. MJ had mentioned the plan that the fleet was coming up, or excuse me, the plan that RSTA was coming up with for the fleet. And I've kind of got that bullet pointed out here, but, you know, I just want to say, in terms of approach to this, it's, you know, there's the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? You know, one bite at a time. We're gonna take this big problem. We're gonna separate it out into chunks. We're gonna have small teams of people working on figuring those answers out. We're gonna have a way that the fleet can provide input and understand what's going on with our efforts. And, you know, that'll have to come through some sort of filter, which we have folks identified for that. And we'll be talking more about, you know, how this team will look and operate. But there will be a channel for that. And so it can get to the different elements and, you know, sub teams that it has to get to. Because there's a lot of gaps to plug here, and we have to make sure that, again, if we're not spreading the virus, you know, where are all the places where it could be transmitted, and what are all the steps that we need to think through to get our outcome that we want. So our timeline there, just kind of the second line of text that you see, we don't have a firm timeline, but it will be well ahead of the typical Bristol Bay travel. Our timeline is going to be somewhat driven by I would say, the borough and the processors as well as the calendar. Obviously, we've got to get things in place, and when we, you know, have a firm timeline, we will be bringing that out. But we really just were given this role as really being the ones to develop a plan for the fleet yesterday. So, you know, if it seems like things aren't happening fast, they actually are happening very fast, and we're getting a team mobilized for it. So I'll just run through quickly. I mean, I think a lot of the bullet points speak for themselves, but in terms of what this plan has to address and figure out, and the protocols that it has to establish, we need to keep the industry and community segregated, and we need to come up with protocols for effective self-quarantine, probably before you come to the Bay and after you get there. We need to have a travel process and protocols that minimize the chance of someone picking up the disease in transit or somebody who is sick getting on a plane. We need to look at tender and fisherman interactions and try to stop the amount of touching and contact as much as we can so that we don't possibly have the virus spreading from tenders to fishermen. We need to have protocols for preventing, crews from getting sick, and what happens when someone is sick on a vessel. What happens from there, and if they need medical attention. So we have a group working on that. I think going along with that is working with the processors in the local borough to look at the medical capacity and the logistics of probably getting supplies in and maybe getting people out if we need to do a lot of medevacs. And those are all things that are going to have to be planned for and prepared ahead of time because by the time the season's here and if it starts happening, it'll be too late. Moving down, we're going to need to collaborate with state and local government. Without the support of, I would say, the state and local government, we don't have a fishery. And so it's very important that we're working together on a plan that meets their expectations, is something that fishermen can still have a successful season with and operate under, which is why this team is comprised of fishermen from the fleet. And I think if we do that, we can have a situation where everybody gets what they want out of it and we achieve the goal. And finally, as all of these things are being planned and worked on, we're going to have probably funding needs, and there's going to be things that need to be bought, equipment, supplies. There might need to be people that need to be contracted. So those needs are going to be compiled and prioritized, and then we will approach, we'll go to the various programs that have been set up. A lot of these are being funded from federal dollars to states is the way it's typically gone. And so, we would look towards those programs to bear a lot of this cost. But that's also part of our plan too. We've got to have a very good plan that meets our goals. We've got to figure out a way to pay for it, either from within industry or externally through the various funds that are out there. And then we also need compliance. Once we have a great plan, it needs to be followed. Otherwise, it's just paper. So that is, I would say, the skeleton of our plan. And we, like I said, we have a team that's currently being assembled to fill that in over the next few weeks. So MJ, do you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Thank you. I was just wondering if you wanted to release any names or hold on till it's fully populated.
I think we could probably hold on till it's fully populated at this time, I'd say. But,
okay, thanks. Well, thanks. I'll keep my comment short. Just so everybody knows, every single thing that we're doing is coming from a place of collaboration. Every single thing that you see up on that list involves some sort of relationship. And we are coming at these relationships with what can we do to work together to arrive at a solution. We are not mandating anything. We're not telling anyone anything. We are asking, we are bouncing ideas back and forth, and from that collaboration, our plan will come. So just know that we are not in this to tell anybody what to do. We're in to help people decide what we can all do together.
Just a little bit more here about, what if you haven't been following the news or haven't been educating yourself on this virus, I just wanted to put a few bullet points up for you. I think at this point we're all probably quasi-experts on this with the amount of attention that it's been having to be given the effect on all of our lives. But it's the CDC says it's primarily spread by person-to-person contact and through the air when people cough. But also if you touch infected surfaces, that is another place where the virus can transfer. From what I've seen, or from what I've read, it tends to live a long time on surfaces. So, hand washing, being careful what you're touching is really important. Symptoms, you probably know: fever, cough, shortness of breath. If you're having trouble breathing or chest pain, having confusion, that's the time to seek medical attention. In terms of prevention, we've all been hearing a lot about that. I won't beat that horse. And finally, of course, there's higher mortality rates for elderly people and those with underlying health conditions. And we might have a lot of young, we might have a lot of healthy people in our fleet, but there are also a lot of elderly people in the watershed, and we need to make sure that everybody makes it through this pandemic alive and well. And flatten the curve, because again, it's not that these people might not catch it. Either people who can easily fight it off or those who it's going to be more difficult for. But by flattening that curve out, we have a better chance of treating those people with medical care that they need, so that people don't die, not necessarily from the virus, but just because they couldn't get proper medical attention. That's where we all can do our part. So if you want more information, I'd say go to the cdc.gov website. There's, a ton of information there. So I guess in closing, before we go on to questions and comments, I'll say the only thing we want people to catch this year is high quality, great tasting Bristol Bay salmon. And like everybody, get back to